It's time you cultivated an attitude. Hey, welcome to another rare conversation with myself, Tony, Jalen, and the wonderful. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. If you've watched our last few conversations over the last couple of weeks, we've talked a lot about, unconditional love. We talked about self love. And today we're going to take the next step and give you some strategies in terms of, you know what? It's time you go ahead and challenge your inner critic voice. I don't know about you, Danielle, but there are times that voice pipes up and it gets loud, but it doesn't even want to talk all loud. Let's talk. Let's for those of you that join us live on YouTube or in Twitter or on Facebook or in our Rare Leader group online. You know, let's call a spade a spade. Life can be hard at times, right?
Yeah.
And the last thing we need is the inner critic taking the wheel and driving us right down. And especially on every little thing that you're trying to do. See, why are we sometimes listening? And I get caught up in this. Why are we listening to a voice that doesn't have your best interest at heart? In the book, the Inner Game of Tennis, if you haven't read that book, it's a fantastic book. It talks about self one and self two. Self one says you can do it, and self two says, that you're terrible. Think about if you're an athlete and you make a mistake on in the game. Sometimes athletes, we watch it on TV, they're like, can't believe it like that. And they hold on to that mistake because self two, aka that inner critic, starts to take over. So we're going to share with you some strategies that we ourselves have used to go ahead and silence that inner critic, so that way the winner inside of you can go ahead and have that stronger voice. So this is interesting. Start noticing. Here's the thing about the inner critic. It likes to whisper and never talk out loud. It likes to whisper and never likes to talk out loud. The last thing they want is to be noticed in their scheme to go ahead and bring you down. And it goes back to almost what we talked about where love starts, and that's the unconditional love for yourself. Um, how can Danielle, like by paying attention to what's going on in your head, help draw the lies out right into the light where they cannot stand being?
Well, I think if you start to notice it, you can start to change um your approach to it and like how you're listening to it. Like a lot of times what happens is they're criticizing something that you aren't probably the strongest at. And so you can take that and use it and change the words and how it's speaking to you and telling you that you're terrible at something, but you're just not good at it yet. And changing how you're allowing whatever it is that, uh, you're terrible at that, like you missed that pass or you missed that sales call or you messed up whatever. Well, maybe it's something that now you can take that and grow on it and you're not good at it yet. And you can figure out ways to use that to help grow yourself.
That made me think of the thought, like, I was talking to Shoe Shine guy at the airport yesterday. And that's the reason why you might think, like, where is Tony at today? Yeah, I'm actually in Cleveland, Ohio today for a leadership meeting. And I was talking to Shoe Shine guy, and I go, he was telling me the story of how he always tries to train these young bucks on how to shine shoes. And all of a sudden, they start shining shoes, and they're like, "Oh, I'm out of this. Like, this is a lot harder than it looks." And I go to him, the professionals make it look easy. He goes, "Oh yeah, there's a process to it. You're not that good in the beginning shining shoes." And then for some reason, I said this phrase to him. I go, "You got to be ugly first before you look good." And he's like, he could not stop laughing about it. He goes, "You got to look ugly first before you look good." He goes, "You gave me a new line to tell people about their shoes. Hey, they got to be ugly first before they look good." And I think it's when you're growing and you get to that next level, you got to remember that sometimes you got to be ugly before you look good. And I love how you said yet. That's the growth mindset, like yet. And I think because we're getting uncomfortable, we want to retract back because the inner critic's like, whoa, 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 what are you doing? What are you doing getting better? What are you doing going ahead and leveling up? I think another way to go ahead, a strategy to challenge your inner voice would be to give it a nickname. So whenever the inner critic speaks up, how about giving it a silly name? For me, I call it Eeyore. Eeyore, what the hell are you doing right now? Like, get out of here. Um, and I think what it does is like when you make a funny voice for it, it's it's a whole lot harder to take it seriously. What do you think?
Yeah, I haven't gone as far as naming mine, but yeah, you can do that, or you can make it your best friend instead of your critic. You can start to use it to help you and to be there as your companion to help you grow versus somebody that's tearing you down.
Yeah. Like, because there's two of them, remember, the self one and self two. The self one says, hey, you can do this. And the self two says, no, 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 no. You think you can, but you can't. And I'm like, oh, hell no. Like, I sometimes I'll go ahead and like challenge it. And, folks, this is not the movie. What's that movie called again? Where they have multiple personalities?
Yeah, I
I,
know. I don't know.
you know
I
what I'm talking about. This is not talking about multiple personalities, folks. This is about labeling the negative voice. And one thing that I learned this strategy many years ago, and I've actually done it. And for those of you guys who are watching, you can actually do this. Okay, we'll take a moment here. Grab yourself a pen and a paper and write down like the things in terms of like, say, for example, you're pursuing a goal, and write down all the reasons why you think you're not gonna be able to get that goal. So grab a piece of paper, write down all the reasons why you're not gonna achieve X, Y, Z. And this is what you do to it. This is another strategy. Strategy number 3. Try saying them out loud in a ridiculous voice. I'm serious. Say them out loud, actually, in a ridiculous voice, and maybe even record yourself. I remember back in this was probably about 2014, maybe 2015. I really had this inner thing saying, you know what, I wanted to go out and achieve another level in my life. And this voice would tell me, the inner critic voice would say, oh, Tony, who are you? You're a college dropout, you speak fast, you talk funny, you may not use proper English. And I would let that keep me from sharing the things that I've learned in life that I truly believe have been a value add to others. So then I put a voice to it, and it sounded like this. Tony, you can't take college. No one ever going to listen to you. Just like they don't listen to Mark Zuckerberg or Bill Gates. All these college dropouts. Have you ever tried that, Danielle?
no.
So it's a strategy that I've used. Um, and by giving it a silly voice, what benefits come from that?
Well, I think even with the silly voice aside, I think just speaking those out loud really puts to light, is it an excuse that you're making for yourself to not be able to hit that? Or is it really something that is an area in which you can work on? And so I think there's a big difference in just it being an excuse. And if you when you say those out loud, you can really tell the difference in what is it a critic just trying to hold you down, and is it just an excuse that you're using to not go for that goal?
Yeah, I mean, cause let's call a spade a spade. A lot of the things that all of us want to pursue, whether it be in health, wealth, or relationships, or work, or wherever it may be, you and I, we are capable of doing it. Capability isn't the question. I think the question is, Are you willing to do it? Are you willing to press through? Are you willing to get uncomfortable? Are you willing, like Neil said, stop making an excuse to get it done? Right? And I think sometimes the inner critic blinds us to our why. And the reason why we want to do something in the beginning. And I think it also does it tests our reasons why we want to do something too. So just give it a funny voice. And I know this may sound ridiculous, but I'm telling you what, I've done this with leadership retreats that I've conducted, and people are like, no, I don't want to say it out loud because they text me. And then they say it like, why was I thinking that? Like, why was I allowing that story to occupy my mind and take me away from living the life that I've been designed to live? Another strategy would be, take a negativity break. You feel the way you feel for a reason, right? But why let that negativity and the critic, get 24 hours to work with you? Like, I don't want to employ them for 24 hours. So how about this idea, Danielle? How about telling them, that negativity critic, self B, to only come on and play at a particular time each day? Like giving you actually space in a room, say, okay, I can be negative for like 20 minutes.
Well, I think it's a great way to go through your emotions and feel your emotions. Like you should, like if something happened and all of a sudden this is the time in which it's like attacking you, give it a time limit where you're going to allow yourself to feel the feelings that you're having, being angry, being negative, whatever it is, and then shut it off. Like I think it's important to feel the different emotions that you have. And I think that it's important to not stay there. And so by being able to put a time limit on it, and allow it to be a part of you, because it is a part of you, whether we like it or not, still a part of us. But giving it its own little time in which it can be that part of you for that day.
Yeah. I think too, it's like, there's not really bad days. There are moments that we allow to turn into a day. We were at a event this weekend, and one of the parents said, you know what, we had one of our best days ever and one of our worst days ever. And they shared the story how they had a great, boating and all this kind of stuff all during the day. And they came back out to find that their boat was no longer in their parking spot. Well, long story short, what they found out was that the place that they parked was not a place allowed for boats to park or trailers to park. And their vehicle and their boat got towed. And but it was interesting because they said like it was still one of the best days they ever had on the lake. And that showed me that they didn't allow one bad moment to take away from the whole day. And that's just where like journaling can come into and whatnot. But I think it's important, if you're going to use this strategy, give it a time limit, right? Don't let it, draw out for a little bit. Like literally get your timer on your phone, put a timer, okay, for 30 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and write it out. I'm going to talk it out. And what's crazy when you do that, you actually start to forget about what was all negative about it in the first place. Because sometimes you gotta let that tea kettle, when it goes, you gotta let you can't just hold it in all the time. Here's another one strategy. Question everything. So there's a thing called self-limiting beliefs. Some people call it a racket. And it's one of those things where it says, you know what, I always mess this up. Okay, always, that means that's 100% of the time. Is that true? Um, what are your thoughts, Neil, on questioning it? Like, because I'm sure there's times in which you've had different things, and all of a sudden, the inner critic was coming out, and all of a sudden you're like, wait a second, you're questioning because then you've ran races, you've done during races, you've done other things. What's your thoughts in terms of questioning the inner critic?
I think it's important to ask why. Why is this happening? Why do I feel like this is coming up at this time all the time, or whatever? Like, you have your emotional words that you use, always and never and all, and in that sense. So I think it's important to ask why. Like, why at this point in my running does this happen? Um, and I think it could just be a way in which you are speaking and allowing. And I think when you think those things, you start to draw them, and they're like self prophesying and coming true because of how you're continually thinking about a situation. Or, I always forget to schedule a follow-up appointment out of my appointment. Well, why? Because you're not maybe making it a purposeful part of your appointment, and so now you can use that to change it. So just continually asking why, and looking through the reasons why maybe at that certain point is always coming up.
Yeah, so it's interesting that you're actually saying, dig into it, why it's coming, like actually analyze it. When I'm thinking about the question, everything, I'm thinking about questioning the inner critic who's saying that I can't do it. You know, like, hey, you can't do it. Well, why can't I do it? You're not able to do this. Well, sure I can. Why not? I think we need sometimes just to argue back and say, no, like, I believe you're wrong. And here's the reason why I believe you're wrong. And it's like when, athletes do this a lot, when all of a sudden that inner critic starts to rear its ugly head. Is no, 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 no. I can do this. Why? Um, and then I think what you got to do is you got to point out examples then of when you did do it. Because it's interesting. When someone challenges us, the not the inner critic, the outer critic, what do? We
We do.
defend it. Yeah, we defend it. Well, why wouldn't we do that with our own self? I know it might sound weird, like, wait, I'm defending against myself. Well, yeah, you're the one tearing yourself down. You're not loving on yourself. I think that's an important thing to like, hey, you know what? No, 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 no. And I think the next one of the final strategies is, replace the words. Drop the negative words entirely and rewrite the script to turn each negative into a positive. So what would be some examples, Danielle, to turn something that we're saying negative, and you did a little bit earlier, but turn negative into a positive?
I think rephrasing it and using yet, because I think yet keeps you in a growing space, and to understand, like, yeah, I might not be the fastest at this mile yet, and it gives my mind then the opportunity to find ways to make that better. And I think just being, depending on where you're at, like, it's easy to stay in that fixed mindset and, like, why am I doing this? There's no point in me going to run. What's it going to help? Like, just understanding that the way that I can frame that is like, today that I might not be the fastest at this mile, but if I can continue to do the little things each day, and I set a goal of a day when I want to reset that, or like re-challenge that mile, like, what have I done in between there to continue to grow?
Yeah, I think too, it's like you sometimes got to recognize where you're at, right? So, I mean, and this, for those of you guys that are watching on YouTube, for those of you guys that are watching on Facebook, um, and this is like the mindset of David Goggins. I'm going to come through the front door when I share this with you. Sometimes people go like, you know what? For example, you're overweight, you're fat. Okay, call a spade a spade. You look in the mirror, okay, I'm fat right now. Someone calls you fat, there might be some truth to it. It may not be the most thing with the frosting on the cake, but sometimes no frosting on the cake is the best cake. So, I'm fat, yet I'm getting better. I'm getting healthier each and every day. It could be that I'm not patient, right? Some people truly aren't patient, but you know what? I'm growing in my patience each and every day. Words matter, and we've talked about this on other calls. Our words become our thoughts. Our thoughts become our beliefs. Our beliefs tie to our identity, and our identity equals our results. So I think it's very important to be mindful. If you're saying, I am this, you're giving power to whatever comes after I am. I am terrible this. Well, don't give that complete power, right? Um, and you got to remember too that this inner critic, it takes time and energy to build up the muscle to challenge it. Wouldn't you say, Danielle?
Mhm.
So it's not going to happen over time. The thing is, it just doesn't just shut once you tell it to go away. So what are some other things you've learned, Danielle, to quote unquote silence and challenge the inner critic, the self being, so to speak?
Well, I think that a big part of it just comes to recognizing it and how much are you letting it dictate what your day looks like, and are you allowing it to make your day crappy, or are you using it to find ways in which you can make the day better? I think that as it's talking to you, it's not like it's the same thing. It's not like it's lying to you. It may be an area in which you need to grow. It just depends on what the approach you're going to take to allowing it to help you, or are you going to let it just hold you hostage to that negativity and leave you there?
Yeah, I think and too the inner critic goes back to the past, right? It focuses on because that's a memory in your memory bank, and that memory can hold you back from moving forward. So, I mean, I think it takes time to silence this. And it doesn't go away overnight. I think truly once people go ahead and start to be aware of it and call it what it is when it shows up, like I know when mine starts to come up. A lot of times mine starts coming up when I'm tired, because I'm not mentally acute, or it comes up when I didn't eat right all of a sudden, or it comes up like this different triggers, and being mindful of those triggers that says, hey, hey, Tony, you can do that. But final thoughts, Neil, as we go ahead and finish up, strategies to challenge the inner critic.
Talk the inner critic out loud. Let it say it out loud and come out of your voice, or into the mirror, whatever it is, and truly see and hear how ridiculous it is that it's holding you to where you're at.
Yeah, because your past doesn't dictate who you're going to be in the future. You have a choice today to go ahead and start a new chapter, and you're the author of it. And you've been given that power to rewrite your story. We see it time and time again in Hollywood. Heck, if Hollywood stars can do it, why the hell can't we do it? Hello. But hey, want to say thank you again for joining us for another Rare Conversation. The purpose of Rare Leaders is to provide the tools, the connections, the resources, so that way you can live a better life, not only personally, also professionally, and in our communities. So feel free to share this if you found value in this today. And if you're not part of the Rare Leader private Facebook group, go ahead and Facebook, type in Rare Leaders, and we will go ahead and give you the pass to come in. Until next time, I'm Tony Jalen, joined by the wonderful, amazing
Danielle Jalen.
Be a Rare Leader and rise up.